Throughout 1979 and 1980, chemical engineer and inventor Gaston Glock was spending most of his time inventing knives for the military and camera parts. I was right about then that he had got word of the military trials for the Austrian military looking for a new sidearm. And what they were looking for was a high-capacity 9mm semi-automatics that would meet the grueling trials of the Austrian military. And it was in 1982 that the Glock 17 beat out some pretty significant handguns, much like the SIG 226, the H&K, P7 and P9, as well as the Browning High Power. Since then, there's been 5 generations and several different variations of the Glock 17. So what we wanted to take a look at is, out of all the Glocks ever made, which one is the best? Jokingly, I thought about starting this video saying something like, well, all Glocks are pretty much exactly the same. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. But I didn't go there. Because all Glocks aren't the same. They are very similar. The basic design of the Glock pistol is the same in all their pistols. However, they have so many different variations, and the generations have been the biggest changes. Trying to narrow down the best Glock is a pretty difficult thing to do. So what I took a look at is the generations and what really took place in the design of that pistol and the evolution of the Glock, as well as the different variations to determine which one is ultimately the best. I'm going to start off by saying when we narrow down the best, it's definitely going to be a 9mm. It's what the Glock was designed to shoot, and it's probably the most carried round for CCW and military alike. So we're going to start off by saying it'll definitely be a 9mm. Moving on from there, we took a look at the generations. The first generation was a series of awesome pistols, and the Glock 17 again beat out some pretty significant pistols to be one of the most durable pistols out there. The first generation also had a hard time getting past the public opinion of the plastic gun. Most would argue the first generation also had pretty terrible grip texturing, and by the second generation, it was the grip texturing that was the biggest change. The second generation was really mostly ergonomical changes, with the exception that they did add a steel serial plate, but it was the third generation where they made the most significant changes. To the frame, it was adding a rail, thumb rest. However, the biggest difference, in my opinion, was the locking block was enlarged, and there was an extra cross pin for better distribution of bolt thrust, which in my opinion leads to better accuracy and durability of the pistol. The third generation became the most beloved generation. When the fourth generation came, I believe Glock kind of went downhill. There were slight ergonomic changes, however, I think the worst changes were they added the dual recoil spring and a slightly smaller slide and barrel. In 2011, there was a recall for most Gen 4 Glocks on that recoil spring. So in my opinion, the fourth generation is probably the worst generation of all. But then along came the fifth generation. And what I've seen in the fifth generation is it's pretty outstanding. What they have changed is it's significantly more ergonomic. I love that they got rid of those finger grooves. Their barrel now has polygonal rifling, which Glock calls the Glock Marksman barrel. They got rid of the locking block pin, and most parts are not interchangeable with previous generations. So what that means to me is this fifth generation, I want to like it more. I just think that the third generation is the best of all. I think the barrel's better. I'm not a big fan of the polygonal rifling. I know it's proven to be pretty exceptional, but I think the third generation had a better barrel. That's just my opinion. On top of that, I'm not a big fan of getting rid of the locking block pin, and even though I don't necessarily buy guns for their interchangeable parts, a lot of people do. A lot of military units do, a lot of police units do, so I think it was a big mistake Glock making this fifth generation without the interchangeable parts with previous generations. So I'm going to say that the best Glock is going to be a third generation and a 9mm. Now let's moving on from there. Let's look at the variations. Originally I was thinking it would be the Glock 17. I mean, that's the first one. It's the grandfather of every Glock. When it comes to the evolution of guns by other manufacturers, I generally prefer the originals. However, with the Glock 17, I definitely can't say that that's the best one they have. So I'm going to say the best Glock ever made is the Glock 19 Gen 3. Now I'm going to call that pistol it because it's significantly more concealable, it's significantly more carryable, as well as it's an outstanding duty pistol for the FBI, the military, any of the above, much like the Glock 17 would be. So I'm going to call the Glock 19 the best Glock ever made. Now, I'm not going to say it's exceptionally better than all the other ones made because, as I kind of stated in the beginning, most Glocks are pretty much very, very similar. Most would argue that if you fired one Glock, you fired them all. But when it comes down to the best, I'm going to call it on the Glock 19. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. You can also now find us at godfamilyandguns.org, on Facebook, and now on Full30, and all those links are below. If you feel called to support this channel, our Patreon link is also below. But the most important part of this YouTube channel is we take prayer requests, so never hesitate to send that stuff in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, love guns.